All right, well, welcome everyone. Here we are at the GCU STEM Showcase, and today we have Moses Thompson, who's actually hosting us at Manzo Elementary in Tucson, that has seriously one of the best, I think the best, but I'm biased, school gardening programs in the country. And I think we have some evidence, right, Moses, to support that claim. But I am so excited to have Moses take us on a tour of what they have here. And just for folks that are watching this, I also want you, Moses, to remember to tell people where you started and how you got to this point. Because sometimes when you see Manzo Elementary's spaces and garden, it can be like overwhelming and intimidating, but they started small and grew it piece by piece. So with that, Moses, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, hey everybody. My name is Moses Thompson. I am the director of the University of Arizona School Garden Workshop, and we work in collaboration with Tucson Unified School District to support school garden enrichment in the Tucson Unified School District. So we teach a class on the university side. Those university students all have to do an internship. We have about 20 school gardens that those U of A students do their internships in. And then we do a lot of teacher professional development in Tucson Unified. So I'm coming right now in from Davis Elementary School. And so we did 2 sessions, 2 school garden professional development workshops, one for the Davis Elementary staff, and then one that was open to the public following that. So that was today. We do that about 10 times a year, and a lot of other professional development too. But my background is in school counseling. And so I started off as a middle school counselor, and then I started working here at Manzo Elementary School in 2005, was hired as the school counselor, and was just struggling to connect with the students, to connect with the families in an authentic way, because I felt like the ways that I was trained were not very therapeutic, pulling kids out of classrooms to come talk to strange white guy in his office that feels like the principal's office. Like, it didn't feel therapeutic, and trying to connect with the parents didn't feel therapeutic. And so stumbled into gardening. I didn't have a background in gardening, but we started doing some projects here at the school and in the neighborhood. And it really was the community's connection to gardening that is where like the magic happened. It wasn't that I was a gardener and that I knew all this awesome stuff about how powerful school gardens were. It was like the parents and grandparents that came to me and said, oh my God, this reminds me of my childhood. Oh my God, my grandparents had a garden. My parents had fruit trees. This reminds me of the ranch in Mexico. Like, all of those stories are the stories that were like, okay, there's something powerful here, and a way for the knowledge and skill set in this community to come into the school in an authentic way, where the students can start to see themselves in the curriculum, and they can start to see their families as being places that hold knowledge. And so this, I think, is emblematic of all of that. This mural didn't happen until maybe 2008 or 2009. So it was a handful of years in the program. We were growing a lot of food, and 2/3 students were Tohono O'odham students. And they were like, oh my, this is my heritage and my cultural, there's like connections here. And so we had a 3rd grade teacher that was insightful enough to bring the parents of those students in and say, like, okay, like, we know that your culture has a connection here, and look at what we're doing here. Like, let's get together and do something. And so they conceived of this project, like, okay, let's do a Tohono O'odham calendar at the school. And so we got, at the time, there's the famous muralist here in town, Joe Pagic. This was before he was famous. He even put his cell phone number on the side. So if anybody wants to bang his cell phone number, it's right here. But it was before he was famous, and he did it for free, the background. So he came in and banged out the background in a day and then went away. And then it took us the rest of a school year to do the calendar overlay. And so that's what the students and the families and tribal members from the Tohono O'odham community came in and did. So if you look closely, there's lots of like pencil and erase markers. Like, we kind of messed up Joe Pagic's mural, but in the best way. And so this is important in a couple of ways. So again, this is old knowledge that lives in this community that was here before we were here, where the kids come to school every day and see this knowledge. I think in this community in particular, we're in the neighborhood of Barrio Hollywood, largely Mexican-American community, but there's so much co-identification as Native American. And the kids all say like, oh, I'm Mexican or I'm Mexican-American, but then parents and grandparents come in and see this and are like, you know, like, it's true, but you know, also like, you're also Pascua Yaqui, you're also Tohono O'odham. And so this has been a conversation starter for a lot of families that start to see like their ethnic identity is more complex than just identifying as being Latino or Mexican American. And so that's cool. Another cool thing about it is we use it to teach climate change. Again, this is old knowledge. You can see what's happening in the natural world each month. And this is over thousands of years, this knowledge has been collected. But we look at it today and it's screwy. It doesn't make sense. So we got really lucky. The last couple of Julys were wet, but 2 Julys ago, it was bone dry and the Catalina mountains were on fire. And so the kids come to school and are like, wait, something's not right there. There's also, we've had late season hurricanes in the Gulf that have given us record rains in September. And so September, the month of short planting season, that doesn't make sense. The September, the month of dry grass, when we're getting record rains because there's late season hurricanes because of climate change, that's not the season of dry grass anymore. And so it just begs those questions, like what's going on? So a lot of cool things embodied here. The other thing I would say that this is emblematic of, every single thing that I'm going to show you on this tour today has the neighborhood's handprints all over them. And so if you see a stone wall, it's because we had a grandfather that was a stonemason. If you see concrete work, it's because we had a family of concrete finishers. If you see carpentry, it's because we had a parent that was a contractor. And so again, doing counseling with the kids, trying to get to know the families. I'm a slow learner, but at some point the light bulb went off, where it was just like, holy cow, this neighborhood has the skill set that we need to make this stuff happen. So I started a little black book of contractor, plumber, landscaper. And then it was a way for me to connect with those families that was not like, hey, I need to talk to you about your kid's behavior, or hey, your attendance isn't awesome. It was like, hey, I heard that you're a plumber. We've got this project, come hook us up. And yeah, the dynamics around those conversations are so much better. And it really, I feel like the stuff that you're gonna see here transformed the climate and culture of this school. That back in 2005, we had a total school of enrollment of 120 kids, super under enrolled. Capacity here is 400. We just were talking about Menlo Park, the 2011-2012 school year, the district moved to close a lot of schools on the west side. Menlo Park got closed, they closed Brickta, they wanted to close Manzo. We did community organizing because we had those connections with the families through the gardening program here. And we were able to twist the arm of the governing board to get this school off of the closure list.
And what's your enrollment now, Moses?
400 with a waiting list.
400 with a waiting list.
Yeah.
Awesome.
But it's not, but to me, it's still a sad story.
Yeah.
Menlo Park, Brickta, those are great neighborhoods that don't have a school. So,
yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Let's check out some more.
So it's after school, so it's not as cool as it is during the school day. But if you take a look down here in the grass, you'll see this little cage. That is not detention. We don't lock kids in there when they're bad. We call that our chicken tractor. And so what it is, it's a mobile chicken cage. And so we push it around the courtyard. It's lightweight. The kids move it. The chickens, they move chickens into it and cycle chickens throughout during the school day. And so what that does for our chickens, they forage on fresh grass, insects. It's a mobile lawnmower. It also has more sun exposure than the coop. So it builds their vitamin D for strong bones and strong eggshells, and the kids know that. But more than anything, it's a tool to make kids catch chickens and chase chickens and have moving chickens around and chickens getting out, be a part of the school day experience here. So we'll go from chickens to reptiles. I feel like they're very close.
They are.
Our tortoise, I don't know if you can zoom down in, but you can see him. He's down in his little burrow. You see him peeking out down in there. So this is our tortoise habitat. When I started in the early days, I didn't know how to grow food, and I knew that growing food was kind of complex. So instead, we focused for a couple of years on building native plant habitats and focusing on ecology, because once that stuff gets established, it's good. And so everything in here, we did some research with the students looking at the nutritional needs of the tortoise, native plants, and what plant palettes we could put together to support the nutrition of the tortoise. We reached out to local experts like at the Desert Museum, and then over the course of a school year, built this tortoise habitat. And when I talked about the stonemasonry, the stone enclosure wall, there was a grandparent that was a stonemason. I think we had written a grant for this through Home Depot, and that's who funded it. And in the grant, it's like, I didn't have the skill set or the vision to see something like a stonemason, like amazing wall. I think I'd written into the grant like a wrought iron, like pool fence looking thing. And we had already broke ground. We were like de-turfing it. We were digging for irrigation and stuff like that. And that's when the grandparent came and was like, hey, what kind of enclosure? What's the wall going to look like? I was like, cheap. Like,
And there was a question about, do you sell your chickens?
the eggs.
They sell the eggs. So tell us how that works.
Yeah, sure. I'll show you. Yeah. Hold that question.
Hold that question.
You're teeing me up. We're going to talk about our Manzo market because we not only sell eggs, but we sell a lot of produce also.
Awesome.
Yeah. Our chickens, we don't sell. Yeah.
And this courtyard that we're in that has the enclosure for the tortoise and that the chickens are in, this is like in the middle of the school.
Yeah. If you're thinking about school gardens, I think a couple of things to think about are think small. To start with, do something really small but really beautiful. And
Where did you start?
Dive in. I started here with the tortoise habitat, and this isn't that small. I'll show you some small places to start, but get your learning curve out of the way in a small domain, because then also you're going to make small mistakes, not big mistakes, and then grow as you get better and as you get more networked and as you grow capacity within the school. Just grow like that.
And connect with places like the University of Arizona School Garden Workshop, because you all have loads of expertise. And tell us just quickly, because I think this percentage is so incredible, how many Tucson Unified Schools have school gardens?
Yeah, more than 70. According to the the Arizona Department of Education, Tucson Unified makes up 43% of the school gardens statewide.
That is incredible.
So there's a real wellspring here of school gardens. And like Danelle was saying, that our programs are good, and they're good. They're nationally recognized. That we have national recognition. Right now we're working on with Sprouts Farmers Markets on a national conference that's going to happen a year from now in San Diego, where our program's going to take the lead on delivering that. Yeah, so we work a lot on the national level.
And didn't you have a video that America Ferrera showed up in to talk about your school gardens or something?
Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah.
Where are we heading now?
The worm bin.
The worm bin.
So this is a great place to start. Vermicomposting. And so you can see, like, it doesn't take much space. It's something that you don't have to do all the time. It's not seasonal like gardening, but you can come take a look in. So you'll see that the kids have collected leaf litter from around the school. We use like mulch or shredded cardboard, shredded paper. So that's the bedding. Oh yeah, there's worms.
And what kind of worms do we have in here?
Red wigglers.
Red wigglers.
So they're like, oh yeah, you see those suckers?
Oh yeah.
They're basically fishing worms. Like if you go to Walmart in the fishing section or Ace Hardware, like that's what you're gonna get are red wigglers. And so the great thing about red wigglers is they're really hardy. We use them to decompose some of the food waste in the school, but they don't depend on that to live. Like really, as long as they're in their bedding and the bedding stays moist, they're gonna live. And so drying out is like the one thing that'll do them off. So in a lot of ways, it makes sense to just do them during the school year when you're up here 5 days a week and you can like look at them and water them as need be. The other good thing is like if you have a successful worm bin for a while and they all die, like they dries out, like you forget about it over spring break or something, they dry out. Your soil or what's in here is inoculated with eggs because they've been reproducing, and those eggs can withstand drought. And so, all you have to do is start moistening it again. And after a few weeks, those eggs will hatch and you'll get a new colony. This worm bin is pretty big. It doesn't have to be this big. It can be like a tote, like a Rubbermaid tote that you get from Home Depot or wherever, Walmart.
But in these kind of barrels, you can get like $15 from like wholesalers.
Yeah, EcoGrow, which is on St. Mary's and I-10, sells these things. I see them on Craigslist. They're not expensive.
And then you can also just search for like DIY worm composting, right? And Sherry Dennis, one of our favorite STEMAzing teacher leaders, has one in her house. She keeps hers inside.
Yeah, keeping them inside the classroom is great too. This one we keep outside, but it's in full shade all the time. It's under a porch, so it won't freeze. It doesn't get too hot. So if it's outside, it needs to be in full shade all the time. So you need like the shadiest spot. This one's cool because we drilled holes in like the lowest part of the bottom. So so it drainage holes. And then we put like a little rain gutter under it. And so when, I'll pour a little bit of this back in. So when the kids come and moisten it, ooh, you see how brown that is? We call that worm tea. Yum, yum.
Worm tea, not to be consumed.
No. So it percolates down through, and it's just the excess water. But the excess water is full of the gut bacteria of those worms. And it's that gut bacteria that is that goes into the soil and makes the soil alive and helps us grow food. The curricular integration, STEM integration opportunities with this are like through the roof. Like when I first started doing this with the kids, I went into a first grade class and talked to the teacher and said, okay, what are you guys doing math wise right now? And he's like, number sense. It's all about number sense. They need to understand like what groups of 2 do, and like what's 5 groups of 2, what's 10 groups of 2, what's groups of 5, what can groups of 5 do? So he's like all about number sense. So what I did was brought him out here to see the worm bin and dig through the worm bin, and we're like, okay, let's make an estimate here. Like, who can give me a good estimate on how many worms are in here? And they're first graders, so they're like 1 million, or they're like 6. Like their estimations were terrible. And I was like, okay, like let's try to get the best estimation that we can as a group, and then let's think about ways we can use math to see like how close we are. Like, okay, you guys are learning how to count by 5s right now, so we're going to survey this worm bin. And so for like a whole semester, I'd bring 4 kids out at a time, and they would pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, put it in another bin, do their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on a chalkboard. And so we did a running tally. Took like 3 months, but we surveyed the whole thing. And then the kids counted by 5 and then compared that with their approximation or with their estimation. Then I introduced the idea of math modeling, where I was like, okay, like this is just a guess and this is like what it really is, but there's something in the middle. Like what if I told you that this is 30 gallons of material that's in here? And like, what if I told you this is 1 gallon? Let's fill out a 1 gallon bucket, and then let's survey that 1 gallon, and then let's multiply that by 30. And then we did it, and they could see where that was. And I was like, okay, we could even do a better estimation than that. Let's survey 5 gallons, and then we can figure out how many groups of 5 it makes 30. And so we're really introducing them to math modeling. The fact that it's math modeling doesn't matter because they have the real world context for it. So when they get to the grade level where they start talking about things like multiplication and fractions and math modeling, they're like, oh, I know what that is. Like we did that with our worm bin. We also have done in the past experiments on what types of food they like to digest, because it's really easy. You can Google it and it's like, oh, they like fruits that are not acidic, and they like soft foods. But instead of doing that, we did some experiments with the kids where we were collecting food waste from the cafeteria, and we cordoned this off just using yarn, like made a grid, and like we buried whatever, pineapple here, avocado here, banana peels here. And the kids were looking at it every day and calculating how many days it took the worms to digest the different types of food. So it's like, whoa, the banana peels were digested in 3 days. Oh, it's 2 weeks later and the pineapple's still not digested.
And thanks to work that we did with Maddie Shepard, Sherry Dennis and I, along with her, created that Worm Worlds journal, which we used in virtual land. And kids had little shoebox size worm worlds that had red wigglers in them. And they tested 2 different foods at a time. And there's a journal on our website, which we'll share the link for later, that you can find that Worm Worlds journal. Moses, what are some of your favorite wormy books?
Man, I should have did my homework before I came. Is there something about like a book to read to a worm? Or...
Yeah, or this is a book to read with a worm.
With a worm.
Think. Yeah,
I think that's probably my favorite one.
That is a really good one, but there's some other awesome ones as well.
We can't move past this until you tell us how many worms were in that bin. that the kids counted.
It was like 1,000 or 1,500, something like that.
You.
It is amazing because little kids don't even have a concept of what 1,000 is. Like 1,000 might as well be 1,000,000 to a little kid. So I feel like this is the power of school gardens, is like giving them context, that like you're not starting the lesson by like open up your books or like today I'm going to teach you about this. It's just like we have a question, and so just the wonderment is just there, and so the buy-in is there.
Very cool.
Also, the other thing that I will say too, this is the counselor coming out in me, and I'm going to try to talk to you guys about STEM because this is STEM, but really I'm a counselor, and social emotional learning is like my jam. And so, and this is not disconnected from STEM, because the way a person feels about themselves, the way they feel about their ability to be successful in math and science, like that controls their whole life trajectory. If you have somebody that doesn't have strong self-concept in math and science, it doesn't matter what curriculum you're giving them. But so when you do something like this, like we're gonna figure out how many worms in here that are in here. No first grader thinks that they have the ability to figure out how many worms are in here. But you do something like that, it changes the way a person feels about themselves and what they think is possible. And I think school gardens do that in a lot of ways. All right, I'm off my soapbox.
Don't ever get off your soapbox. Some more cool artwork here, Moses.
No, that was before my time.
Yeah.
It's real 80s. So you want to pan the courtyard and then come back to the Manzo Market?
So this is another courtyard here at the school.
This is kind of ground zero courtyard. This courtyard used to be a grass courtyard with nothing else, just grass turf. And now it's not. All right.
How many years have you been doing this, Moses?
Since 05, and we were kind of on a building tear between 05 and 2012. And that's when most of the stuff that you'll see was built. Yeah, hopefully it doesn't blow down. So the question about selling chickens or selling eggs, yeah, typically during the school year, every Wednesday, we do a market for the families here. And this is our Manzo market cart. It's a mess. I apologize. I didn't come early and stage
That's all
it.
right.
So you can see whatever on the board is what we were selling last Wednesday. And so it looks like eggs, Swiss chard. Looks like we had apples and kumquats and cilantro. I don't even know what, bok choy, turnips. So that's a good spread of what we have. But we train the 4th and 5th graders. They come out in small groups during the day, do all the harvesting, all the food handling, prep it. We have 5th graders that are trained to run the market. So they get released from class a little bit early. We take it out to where parent pickup is and they set the market up. And then we have a captive population because every parent has to come through. It's like a total bottleneck. They can't escape it. It's like right there. And then we put kids that just are like at the car windows, like peer pressure hard. But also it's like the kids too, like are dragging their parents back. And so we try to keep our stuff really affordable. I mean, as you can see, we're selling eggs for $3 a dozen in the COVID economy. Like, yeah, cheaper than a grocery store. The other thing is like, anybody that wants produce can have produce. Like, we don't care. We're not trying to make money on it. So really it's about getting the food into the community.
Are you still selling some of your things to local restaurants or?
Yeah, periodically. It's hard. The restaurants that we work with have to just like be really on the fly where it's like, I've got a surplus of bok choy, like, can I bring a load? So yeah, we have relationships with restaurants that support us. I would say right now, the El Charro restaurants. So El Charro downtown, Charro Vita, Charro Steak, and then the Monica downtown. It's all the same family of restaurants. Those guys are really generous to us and support us in a big way.
And Moses, when we're talking about consuming things from a school garden, Arizona has done a lot of work to make that easier for teachers and students. Can you talk just a little bit about that? Because I know that this is not true in every state.
Yeah, so I think it was the 2011-2012 school year, we were growing tons of food and really wanted to find a pathway to serve some of that food in the cafeteria. The food service director for Tucson Unified was just like, oh my God, like you're gonna get kids sick. Like, what are you doing? And so they basically didn't tell me no, but they're like, you have to get certified by the state health department before we're willing to accept some of your produce. So called the state health department, they sent out sanitarians, and there just wasn't a model for this. They brought the standard operating procedures and protocols for commercial farms and like handed that to me. I'm just like, bro, like, I don't even know, like, what, look around, like, what am I supposed to do with this? And so we kept trying, and they would come out and they would fail us. They kept trying, they'd come out and fail us. I was actually ready to give up, but I was working on it with a friend named Nick Henry from the Community Food Bank of Southern Arizona, because they saw the value in this too, wanted to see it happen. And he was like, bro, let's keep going. And then he was like, why don't we try to get the director of Pima County Health Department to come in on a tour and just see what this stuff is. So we brought him in, toured him, showed him everything you showed today. And then at the end of the tour, we just were like, your mission as a health department is to keep people healthy. Like, look at how these communities are suffering and like the health issues here. And we're trying to address that. Like, you're worried about people getting sick from produce, but there's bigger issues here. He was. And so that guy was super inspired and was just like, oh my God, we want the same things and we're doing the same things. and he got us an audience up in Phoenix with the head of the state health department. And we went up there, we had like 10 minutes with this guy, and we had a list of like kind of demands, like where all the sticking points were, because like composting was a sticking point, chickens were a sticking point, rainwater harvesting. And so the head of the state health department went down our list and was like, not an issue, not an issue, not an issue, want more information, not an issue, want more information. In a 15-minute meeting, he like did like 2 years worth of work for us. And so we went back and we wrote new standard operating procedures, and they opened the door to it. And so they created specific protocols based on a lot of the stuff that we do here for schools and gardens to get certified. And they created a position for a sanitarian at the state level that would just inspect school gardens and was an expert on school gardens. So we certified Manzo. The next year we certified 12 schools. And this wasn't just here, this was happening across the state. And every time the sanitarian came here, they're like, oh my God, this is too much. I have to drive to Yuma, I have to drive to Navajo Nation, I have to. And so in 2016, state legislature passed a bill, and I don't remember the name of the bill, that designated school gardens as an approved source. And so it doesn't require certification from the health department. It's just basically saying school gardens are okay to use. So we have blanket. We still have the operating procedures. We still use good handling practices. As you're thinking about food safety in your school gardens, all of my dialogues with the sanitarians and the health department over all those years trying to get that work done, I kept asking them, like, what are you afraid of? Like, what gets kids sick? And they were like, humans are the vector. And so it's like kids washing their hands is critical. Kids that are sick or not feeling well, exclude them from any food handling or harvesting. And so really, as you think about the most important things you can do to do good food handling, it's hand washing, hand sanitizing, and excluding kids that have been sick or don't feel well from the food handling process is a lot of where I think their most concerns are at.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, that's just,
know, like, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling well.
The other funny thing about kids is like kids like to tell you when they're not feeling well just because they don't know what's coming next. So you're like, hey, is anybody not feeling well? And like half the hands go up. You're like, all right, you're a door holder. You're da, 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 da. So this is the first vegetable garden that we built. And so you can see it's like a modest size. It's not giant. We built this back when this courtyard was still grass. So this was like the first thing that was built in this courtyard. And then we did all the native plant habitat around it and the rainwater harvesting and chicken coop. So the area that you look down in here where that stone circle is, looks like some of the rocks have fallen out, but that's when I was a school counselor here, I built that as my counseling office and used to do small group counseling. We'd all go sit in the round and talk.
And I'm loving the garden poetry box.
Yeah, kids come out, kids that finish their work early or need a break from class, teachers can send them out with a clipboard and they can come out here and write poetry and put poetry in the box.
Well, and this kind of structure has connections to indigenous roots as well, right?
Yeah.
Kiva.
Yeah. That was do you know, it's so funny that you mentioned that. I called it a kiva, and then I had a Hopi person tell me that I shouldn't call it a kiva.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, it was a humbling moment, but I really appreciated that person being like that with me, that they were just like, this is our traditional knowledge and it's a spiritual thing. And even though you have a round thing, it's different than like what a kiva is. So,
yeah. And Manny was just saying,
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a fine line that we try to walk, like even with the Tana Atam calendar, to just to be upfront and say this is not my knowledge. This is somebody else that was here before me that has knowledge that I don't have.
where are we heading now, Moses?
We can look at the composting and chicken coop.
Definitely want to see some chickens. What do you recommend for people if they want to get started with chickens?
Yeah,
Get an egg.
chickens are actually easier than vegetable gardens.
Really?
Yeah, because
Convince us that's the case.
yeah. So with chickens, really they're good for 3 or 4 days without attention. If you have a good watering system and feeder. So on weekends and holidays, you just need to have a team and you have to have a summer plan or a vacation plan for them. But really, it takes up less real estate. They're not seasonal, so you don't have to have the skill set that you need to grow food well that you do here.
Oh, chickies. Look at this one. How many eggs do you get?
So this time of year, we get 1 a day from each chicken. Their laying is tied to their circadian rhythm and the hours of sunlight that they get. So they lay a lot less when there's less hours of daylight than they do when the days get longer. And I would say too, with everything that we have here garden wise, like there is nothing that the kids like more than the chickens, and the chickens never get old. And the community, the parents are in here before school, like everybody loves the chickens.
And in terms of that structure that you have, do they have to build something that's permanent to get started, or?
Yeah, I think that
Smart.
yeah, I think so too. When I think about school gardening projects, I try to think about things in 10-year increments, that I want something that I'm not going to have to maintain for 10 years. And so even if that means I have to wait and raise more money, and like, I really have learned not to go cheap, because yeah, it's just more work, and you're kind of paying yourself forward when you build something really well that's really going to last. This coop was built in probably 2008, and we haven't done anything to it.
Yeah.
And it's predator proof. A coop like this would be expensive though. It'd be like probably $3,000 to build.
And again, you're also leveraging community partners that have
Yeah.
skills that can help you with that.
For sure. With chickens too, gardens need irrigation systems. That's work all the time. The seasonality of it can be tricky for teachers. And so this takes all of that out of the equation. I think for chickens, having a plan for vacations is really important. And schools do it differently. Like here at Manzo, we have 5 or 6 of us that kind of sign up, and we put together a Google Calendar where a person is in here every 3 days, and that's it. And then people can take time off and whatever. But we also have had schools where we've built a coop at the school and a coop in the backyard of a teacher or a family, and the chickens go on vacation to somebody's backyard during the summer and then come back to the school. The other thing you want to think about is when chickens get older and stop laying chickens, and an exit strategy for those chickens. So having somebody in the community that can butcher chickens is really important, or just a plan. Like for me, that's like the phone call I hate to get. It's like a school that's had chickens that's like, hey, we've got these 6-year-old chickens that don't lay anymore. Like, do you want them? It's like, no, I don't want them. Like, you don't want them. Like, somebody needs to butcher those chickens probably.
Yeah. Chicken
so-
exit strategy, somebody said.
Yeah, we've partnered before in Tucson. There's a local nonprofit called Ishkashida, and they work with refugee families that glean fruit trees. But there was a year that we had an older flock, and I called Ishkashida, and they sent a refugee family over that butchered and wanted the chickens for food.
Great.
And so they didn't do it here. We boxed them, put them in cardboard boxes, and a family took them home that was excited to butcher them. In this neighborhood, historically, we've had families that butcher them, that want them and butcher them. So that's something you have to think about too. Because also the other thing is, like, if a chicken gets injured or is sick, a lot of times the best thing to do is to kill the chicken. I mean, unless your school has the ability to take it to the vet and pay $1,000 vet bill for a chicken, but most schools do not. And so, I feel like you have to be ethically okay with that and ready for the reality of that. And not everybody is, and I'm not even trying to force everybody to be. But if you want chickens, that's kind of the reality of chicken food production.
And there's a question about any 4-H connections to the chickens.
We don't have any, but if you have 4-H in your community, that would be an amazing partner to bring in to support a chicken project at a school.
And I know Lisa Kist, who's now a district science specialist for Tucson Unified, she had chickens at Gridley Middle School, and she's also involved with 4-H with her kids and now with groups. So it can be done.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that's awesome. So I'll show you our composting. We compost a lot of food waste here at the school. So these are our compost bins. The kids manage them. The kids bury the food waste, turn them. This is our compost sifter.
This is a lot. It's big.
Yeah, it's a lot. This is bigger than probably most schools should attempt because the workload is giant. But this school, we've been doing it for so long that we have systems in place and support in place to do it. If you want to compost at your school, I really suggest starting with like 1 day a week, like a 5-gallon bucket a week, 2 5-gallon buckets a week, like just doing it small scale. one of the biggest challenges for composting is having a source of carbon, because when you compost, you want to maintain a 30-to-1 ratio. So 30 carbon, 1 nitrogen, and the nitrogen is the food waste from your cafeteria. And that poses a problem for schools because we have an unlimited amount of nitrogen, but we can't afford to come out and just like food waste, food waste, food waste. You're going to have a really nasty compost bin that's going to attract insects and mice and stink. And we can't do that here. And so the way that you prevent mice and insects and stink is maintaining that 30-to-1 carbon to nitrogen ratio, which means you need 30 times the amount of carbon than the food waste that you're collecting out of the cafeteria. So that's hard. That means you either have to buy straw bales, or we have a relationship with a couple of tree trimming companies in the city of Tucson, and they dump their mulch here. So you can see that everything on the ground, everything around, that's all wood mulch from tree trimming.
And if people are wanting to get started, but they're feeling intimidated, who can they access or where can they go to get all these hints and tips that you have? And how the heck did you learn all this?
Yeah, I just learned by doing, really. And yeah, just doing research and talking to folks. Yeah, and we're happy to be a resource too. But again, start small. Like maybe you could start with a bin like this. Like I think that this is 8 feet by 4 feet by probably 3 feet. And a bin like this could maybe handle like 2 5-gallon buckets of food waste a week. Oh, the other thing, the chickens are critical to the composting too, at least here. Here, we're very extreme about our composting. We compost all of the food waste at the school, which is a lot. It's like 80 pounds of food waste a week. But to do that, we need our chickens. Our chickens digest probably 20 or 30% of all of our food waste. So our chickens are our most effective composters.
That's great. This seems pretty ginormous. What is this, Moses?
Yes, so this is our greenhouse and aquaponics system. So again, this is like, I wouldn't recommend this to at all to like fledgling gardens because it's actually a workload, and greenhouses in Tucson are really only a benefit from maybe October through April, and beyond that they're a liability. They get really hot, and they require cooling. So we have a swamp cooler going right now, and we have overhead fans that go, but the greenhouse allows us to propagate, and so all these plants along here are stuff that we grow in-house by seed, and then transplant into their gardens. We also grow more than we use here. So in Tucson Unified, it's a way that we can support schools, that if schools are gardening, we can provide them with seedlings, the right seedlings at the right time of year to help try to dummy proof it for teachers that are just getting started.
And can you clarify the difference between hydroponics and aquaponics?
Yeah, if you come over here, you'll see, so you can see our fish. So these are tilapia that we're farming. So with aquaponics, the aqua part is aquaculture, so fish farming. And so this is a closed system where we're farming tilapia, and then the wastewater from the tilapia cycles through the grow beds. And so the fish provide the nutrients for the plants. The plants in the grow beds provide the filtration that the fish need to have clean water. So the main output by the fish is ammonia, and that's actually what would poison them if we don't figure out how to remove the ammonia from the water. So in these grow beds, we have these little pebbles. These are actually clay pellets, and they harbor 2 types of bacteria. One type of bacteria that converts the ammonia to nitrites, and then another type of bacteria that converts the nitrites into nitrates, and then the plants can digest the nitrates out of the water. And so that's the cycle. That's the nitrogen cycle that's happening here.
And this greenhouse, how expensive is it? And how many schools have something like this? Because this is pretty unusual.
Yeah, schools like that have something like this. I would say that there's 4 or 5 in our network is all. This is probably a $50,000 greenhouse.
And what happens to the tilapia?
We eat them. We farm them to 2 pounds, and then we'll clean them and sell them to the community, or we'll use them to do food prep here.
Yeah. And how much did this system cost?
I think at the time about 10 grand, but again, this is like in the mid 2000s. So
Yeah,
probably more than
quite a
10
bit more
grand.
now.
Yeah. Also, if you come over this way, and I'll show you this way, what we're doing over here in these boxes. So another thing we use our greenhouse for is to propagate fruit trees. And so in these boxes, we have misters that go off like three or four times a day, kind of like in the produce department at the grocery store when you hear the thunder and lightning, and that's what happens in here. And what we're doing is we're keeping cuttings of trees, fruit trees, where we just cut the branches, and we put them in a media that drains really, really well. And then the misters keep them alive long enough to produce roots. And so we're cloning, we're creating genetic replicates of heirloom fruit trees. And so these are fig trees. And so we work with Mission Garden. We take students over to Mission Garden and we help them propagate their fruit trees and then bring back the cuttings here to clone them. I'm gonna see if there's some roots on this, guys.
People that may not be familiar with Mission Garden.
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell us more about Mission Garden.
Yeah, sure. It's kind of like a living history museum of agriculture in the Tucson Basin. And it's close. It's on the west side of Tucson.
It's like less than a mile from here. Right?
Yeah, it's close. It's at the base of a mountain. And so at the Mission Garden, they have curated some of the oldest non-native fruit trees to the region. So fruit trees that came with the Spanish in the late 1600s, early 1700s. So these are European, Mediterranean, Asian fruit trees that came here for the first time. A friend of ours, Jesus Garcia, started a nonprofit called the Kino Heritage Fruit Tree Project. So it's like searching the desert Southwest and the Mexican North and Northwest to find these oldest surviving fruit trees. And then they clone them. And then now they curate them at Mission Garden. They've got a whole fruit tree orchard. And so we're kind of preserving that legacy by doing the fruit trees here. So again, these are just stems that we cut. But this does a couple of things. So it preserves the genetics of a really old fruit tree, which is cool. We talk to the kids about these being time machines because the fruit that this produces is the same exact genetic fruit that the folks here were eating in the 1700s, 1800s. But the other thing that it does when you clone instead of grow by seed is you're jump starting the fruiting process, where if you were to plant a fig seed, it might be 10 years before you get fruit. One of these will produce fruit. You'll get a mature tree in 2 years when you clone. So it's like turbo boosting.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So we do it with grapes, figs, pomegranates.
And what happens to these trees once they get bigger?
Yeah, so we'll do, some of them go to Manzo families. Some of them will go back to Mission Garden, and then we'll sell some to local nurseries to bring back some money. It's funny, in the early days, like I was just super green and like, yeah, so we're gonna fill Barrio Hollywood with fruit trees. And so we did this, and when we do this, we get like 300, 400 fruit trees. And so I created this letter of agreement for students to take home to their families if they wanted a fruit tree, and like they had to draw a map of their yard and where the water access was and where they were going to plant the tree and what their like plan of care. So the kids had to write out all that stuff and then get a parent's signature on it. And I was like, yes, like this is going to be awesome. So we sent home so many fruit trees and got so many of those things back. And then we came back a year later to check on those trees, and like they're all dead. It didn't work. So it just
What are
takes
you
a
doing
lot.
now?
Yeah, I mean, families have to seek us out, and a lot of it's the relationship with the parent. Like you can tell, but like you can't just send. It'd be like sending a pet home with somebody. Like you really have to be like, you go out of town for a week and you don't water your fig tree, it's gonna die.
Yeah, and
So-
those are lessons learned, right, along the way.
Yeah. Nobody's killed more fig trees than I have. In Tucson Unified, I swear to God, I've probably killed 1,000. Yeah.
Well done, Moses. But you've learned a lot.
I learned a lot, and we're not killing thousands of them anymore.
That's the important part.
Okay, how are we on time?
What time is it, Manny?
Uh-oh.
Oh gosh, I didn't do a good job watching.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Thank you.
Where are we heading now?
I'm going to show you some vegetable gardens that I think should be like starter gardens. This is my recommendation. If you're a classroom teacher and you want to start with a garden, this is my recommendation to you.
Danelle,
this is not,
I was just gonna say, while he's walking, we could ask some of these questions in the chat.
Yeah.
So we talked about how do you go about setting up a coop? Did you get funding? How did you collect the hens?
yes, so we buy the hens from a feed store. So in Tucson, we either get them from Arizona Feeds on South 6, or we get them at OK Feed up on like Fort Lowell and Alvernon. So we buy them from feed stores. In the past, we have some schools that will incubate the eggs and do that whole thing. But that's complicated. You have to really be in it. Also, you have to be ready that like half of them are going to be roosters. And what are you going to do with all these roosters? Roosters suck. You don't want roosters. So we wait and try to buy what's called pullets. And that's a young hen that has all of their feathers, because once they have all their feathers, they can live outside. You don't need grow lights. Also, once it's a pullet, you can sex it. You know what sex it is. And so you're not buying roosters on accident. Even if you go to Ace Hardware or whatever, and they have the little chicks, they'll be like, oh, like these are all hens. Like, dude, you don't know that. Like they're not, like they're for sure not. So you're rolling the dice. Also, when they're little, there's still chances that they might die or something might not be right with them. And like, you don't want to inherit that. So I say pullets are the way to go. So we only buy when they have pullets. So like, let's say that we have a school that wants a coop and we call the feed stores and they have the little chicks. We're like, oh no, we just put that on ice until they have pullets, even if it means we have to wait a month or 2 months.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's see this
Great
quickly,
advice.
Moses. We might have to save some questions, Corey, because I want to make sure we get outside because I know some other stuff that's out here.
yeah.
I thought
So
you were
just
gonna talk and walk. So yeah, go ahead.
Well, we
I'll
can
be
talk
quiet
and walk
and
after this because we'll have a little bit of a walk. So do you see these two garden beds here? These are stock tanks. Like what's used is like water troughs for like cattle or horses. These are the perfect way to start gardening. Container gardens, raised bed gardens. You don't have to deal with weeds. You don't have to blue stake because you're not digging in the ground. So it doesn't matter if you have a water main or like gas or electric under the ground, and you can move them around. So if you don't like the place you put them first, you can move them.
So there's no digging underground, which means you don't have to call the utility.
Yeah. And also dealing with like the district or whatever, like these are modular.
What are we growing in these right now?
I see beans, I see squash, I see marigolds. Do you want to hear the beauty of these gardens?
Yes.
The beauty of the gardens is I have no clue because the teachers run it like all by themselves. Like it's not like we come out and run these gardens. So if you turn around, like these are our preschool classroom doors. And so proximity is really important.
Right outside their door.
Yeah, exactly, because you see it all the time. And so it becomes a point of pride. Like if these look like garbage, everybody knows that they're yours and they're right outside your door. If you're gardening on the far corner of the school where nobody sees, it's harder to garden that space.
Yeah.
So here, they're right here. The teacher can prop the door, send 2 kids out with watering cans, send 4 kids out with observation clipboards. It's just right here. So proximity to the classroom is really important. Scale, it's small, it's not overwhelming. They put this cool trellis, and so their beans and their squash are gonna make this little trellis.
Is that your pizza oven over there?
Yeah, I'll show you our pizza.
I didn't get an invite to the pizza cook-off the other day, Moses. I'm a little disappointed.
You know, I didn't either.
What?
I didn't see it until it popped up on Facebook. Yeah, so this is an Adobe oven that we have. And so we do culinary stuff. We bake bread and make pizzas. Again, this is not a starter.
That's not a starter project.
That's not a starter project.
All right, let's head outside.
Is this a citrus tree?
Yeah. Yeah, we have a handful of citrus trees here. Citrus is the best fruit for schools to grow because they fruit during the school year. Birds don't get them, and they're kind of grab and go right off the tree. So they're the perfect school fruit tree. Go ahead. A lot of schools try to grow stuff with soft skin and then birds get them, or they plant stuff that doesn't fruit during the school year. So like peaches and apples are good examples of 2 things that don't fruit during the school year. And so you're like watering this plant all year long, and then the kids never get the harvest. Do we want any questions?
Yeah, questions. We're walking out now.
Whoa. Oh.
All right. I think we asked
We do this like every time. So
cardboard. What about cardboard and school paper waste? I'm sure
about
that
what?
might
What
have
about cardboard and what?
And school paper waste. Andrea asked that question earlier. So
Oh,
my-
yeah. For
Very
composting,
specific.
sure.
For composting,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, shred it and use it. It's just not enough, but
Not
definitely
enough.
shred it and use it.
Okay.
But again, when you think about that 30-to-1 ratio, it just would be so much cardboard and so much paper waste.
And right now we're walking out underneath the solar panels, right?
Yes.
But I mean, there's potential, you can partner with local businesses or like you guys, tree folks to, maybe create.
Yeah.
So yeah, that partnership with local businesses is critical for getting that extra carbon.
Yeah, also knowing your school community, surveying your students, finding out what your parents and families are doing. Like for sure, you've got tree trimmers in your school community, and I'm sure that they would rather dump mulch at your school site than pay to drive all the way out to the landfill and pay tipping fees. So that's why they dump here.
It's win-win. So we're underneath the solar panels. Can you tell us what's going on out here, Moses?
Sure. So first I'll show you, this is our stockpile of mulch. So tree trimming companies back their trucks and just dump here. So we always have a big thing of mulch. And so this is having a stockpile of mulch is critical if you want to, compost. Okay, we'll walk.
Any other questions, Corey?
Yes, ma'am. Just one recently from Rebecca Busmay. She says, are there any school garden grants that we can apply for?
What grants do you know about, Moses?
Like Whole Kids Foundation and Sprouts Foundation. There's an organization called Kids Gardening. If you Google school garden grants, you're going to get more results than you know what to do with.
Good.
There's a lot of school garden.
And they can
grants
sign up for
available.
your newsletter, right?
Yeah. If you email me, we can put you on our mailing list, and you can know about when our professional developments are available. And
When they fill out the survey at the end, they're going to get a link in the email they get with their certificate that links them to your site, so they can sign up there and see all
Yeah.
kinds of other cool resources.
Yeah. Okay, so you can see, here, pan up real quick. So this is an unusual garden. You can see that we are gardening in the footprint of photovoltaic solar. And so, yeah, it begs a lot of questions. Like, why would we build a garden right underneath the solar panels? And we do it for a couple of reasons. This is actually an experimental garden. We call it our agrivoltaic garden, and agrivoltaics is a mashup of agriculture and photovoltaic solar. And so we're working with a scientist at the University of Arizona that is looking at ways to adapt food production for a warming and drying climate. And so we know a couple of things about photovoltaic solar. As the panels heat, they produce electricity less efficiently. And so we live in a very hot climate that's getting hotter. So how can we make these produce electricity more efficiently? Also, the metal structures and glass structures, they heat load during the day and radiate off that heat during the night. So heat islanding, like the heat island effect, is making hot microclimates where these panels exist. So anything we can do to cool the panels down helps them produce electricity more efficiently and buffers heat island effect. And so we want to cool the panels down. Also in the desert Southwest, we are seeing agriculture land being converted to big scale solar as water becomes more expensive, as farming becomes less profitable, and as the demand for solar energy goes up. If you look at Google Maps of the Central Valley in Yuma, time lapse, you see just farmland being converted to giant scale solar. So we're losing farmland, we're losing food production. So the question that the science is asking is like, why not both? Is there a way we can do both in the same footprint that improves both systems? So the cooling part, how can we cool the panels? Doing agriculture underneath it, when plants photosynthesize, they open their pores and they release moisture. So transpiration is basically evaporative cooling. So I don't know if anybody's ever driven through like an orange grove at night or like an orchard at night, like it gets cold, and that's transpiration. Yeah, drive by golf courses, exactly. That's a perfect urban example. So we are seeing a 10 degrees Celsius cooling effect on these panels when we do agriculture underneath, because all of the evaporation from the irrigation, transpiration of the plants cools those panels. So the panels produce electricity more efficiently and buffers heat islanding. We are growing in this understory. And so in an arid environment, this produces water savings of up to 50%. And so we also have a control garden out in the full sun. We can walk out there.
Yeah.
So we plant replicates. So.
And there was a question, does anybody use their solar panels for water harvesting, Moses?
No, because they space the solar panels out for breathability. So like if you look up, you can see all the blue sky gaps. So they're not solid. They don't shed water.
And that would make it difficult to try to harvest any water
Yeah.
off that.
Right.
So this garden out here that's in the sun away from the panels.
Yeah, that's our control garden. And then you can look back into our experimental garden. And so these are all brand new seedlings that are in, because we're going into a new season, our warm season. But if you were to come during the winter season with the stuff that we just harvested, you would see QR codes on stakes all over the place. And those are our replicates. So we have replicate plants in the experimental and control. Kids come out with their iPads, scan the QR codes, do their observations. So we're collecting data that's being used in scientific research, and it's being published on here.
I love that you have these chalkboards and a lot of these spaces do create a kind of outdoor classroom.
Yeah. Also, pro tip, whiteboards outside suck.
Tell us why.
Chalkboards are awesome because the markers dry out so fast. The whiteboards are like, it's the whiteboard surface is on like particle board. So once it gets wet, they like delaminate.
Yeah.
So chalkboards, old school
Still the way to
chalkboards,
go.
Still, yeah, for the outdoor learning spaces. In fact, it sucks if you're in TUSD because we already gobbled them all up. But there's a surplus warehouse that TUSD has of like all their old gear. And once we realized that chalkboards were the way to go, we were just like on the phone, like gobbling up all the chalkboards as they were converting to like smart boards. They were tearing these things out of classrooms. So we were stockpiling them. A lot of the schools that we work in, we bring chalkboards and mount chalkboards.
Any other questions while we have this incredible expert? And Moses, thank you again for your time today. I always love spending time with you and hearing even more of your story.
Also, if you want to look back here, do you see the big tree that's blowing in the wind? That's an avocado tree. And you'll see these are all chiltepin bushes. And we've got a mango tree, and then we've got Mexican sweet lime trees. These are all tropical plants. And so you can't grow plants like this out in the open, but it's this microclimate that's in here where it's always a little bit warmer in the summertime because we have this heat catch above us, and it works as a frost protection. And then it's cooler under here in the summer because we're catching the moisture and of the shade. So we've created a microclimate where we can grow tropical things. So
And those are all very common in Mexican cuisine.
yeah.
So there's a lot of cultural.
Common in Mexican cuisine, yeah.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like if you're creating a school garden, if you can create the school garden that works as a mirror for your community to see themselves and their culture and their heritage, like that's the power. I feel like I'm a slow learner, but in my early days, people were like, saw me as the weird garden guy. So it's like weird white guy comes in the neighborhood and gardens. And so wanted to change that dynamic of like, no, like this is so much more than that. This is like a part of who this community has been for a really long time. So that's more what we're trying to reflect now.
And how do you manage volunteers from the community?
We do a weekly community work project during the school year, and one of our team members coordinates volunteers, so volunteers can come out. We work at a different school site every week.
Nice. Other questions, Corey?
Yep, I have some questions for you. First off, can you list any funding or grants for chicken coop? Oh no, I already did that one. Sorry. Chicken coop and the turtle. Maybe I didn't do that one. Did I do the turtle? Did I ask you about the turtle?
It's a tortoise.
I would. Home Depot and Lowe's have been generous to us over the years, so I would check the Home Depot and Lowe's websites. Again, if you have anybody in your school community that works at Home Depot and Lowe's, like that opens the doors for funding. And a lot of individual stores have like their managers have access to like philanthropy budgets.
If people want to come and tour any of the school gardens in person, what can they do?
Yeah, hit us up. We do tours all the time.
Yeah. And then again, if they sign up for your newsletter, you also do professional development all the time.
Yeah.
Is that around the state or is it just here in Southern Arizona?
Mostly here in Southern Arizona, but if there's demand, we'll travel.
Excellent.
Yeah, I've been bugging you so much about STEMAzing, but every summer we do a 3-day school garden institute that's open for folks around the state that want to come and do a 3-day intensive with us. And so we want to do it again this year, the second week in June or third week in
We're
June.
still looking for funding, but we're hoping that it comes through.
Yeah, we're
Hotel rates are cheap in Arizona.
in the summer. Yeah, come staycation at like one of our resorts. It's like $400 in the wintertime and like $150 in the summertime.
And you have in the past given teachers starter kits. What are in those starter kits at the STEMAzing Institute strands that you've done?
Yeah, so we usually include a book called The Growing Classroom. So I highly recommend the book called The Growing Classroom.
Mm-hmm.
We usually include a small scale worm bin materials for making a worm bin, and those are just like the Rubbermaid totes. We always include some of our favorite children's books. You're going to get a link to our website, schoolgardens.arizona.edu. We have a list there of our favorite school garden children's books. We have an almanac, which is a garden handbook that we produce every year, and it's a great starter kit. Those are available on our website for download. And if you ever come train with us, we'll give you a hard copy.
Awesome.
Okay, my goodness, thank you so much. This has been fantastic. I also want to ask, I know it's 5 o'clock right now, so if there's anybody who needs to pop off, we understand that. Are you okay with a couple more questions, Moses?
Sure.
Okay, so most of them are about funding, and then here's one: how can other schools work with or partner with you? Do you partner with other schools? It sounds like you partner with STEMAzing.
Yeah, and most of our support is centered in the Tucson Unified School District because we get support from TUSD. So especially if you're a TUSD school, reach out to us. Even if you're not a TUSD school, let us know. We can put you on our mailing list to get our monthly newsletters and to see when our professional development trainings are, because those are not exclusive. People from everywhere can come to those, and we can share resources. So
like a statewide network of school garden folks?
Manny's question was, is there a statewide network?
No, there has been a bunch of iterations over the years, but they've just never really had traction or like produced anything like
Sustainable.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Great. I know Andrea had asked, could you use them for water harvesting, but that was a while back. So Andrea,
Yeah, we answered that one.
you
Yeah.
answered that. Okay, I'm just kind of going back through, and I think that is
The other thing I would say for the funding piece is talk to your office managers about tax credit money that your school might have, because that money is hard to spend, and a lot of schools have like a bunch of tax credit money that just rolls over each year, and that those tax credit dollars can fund extracurriculars, they can fund science, they can fund art. A lot of times you just have to be a little bit creative with how you word it.
21st century funding.
Yeah.
Also
21st century funding. Yeah.
Yeah.
A good call, Manny.
super. I think that's it for questions in the chat, but anyone is able to hop on and ask a question if they want to, if Moses got a couple minutes. This has just been phenomenal. It's so exciting.
Isn't it impressive?
It's just so fantastic to see what you've built. And what I really love about what you were talking about is that it's TUSD funded, you're collaborating with the University of Arizona, and you're helping other schools do what you do. And I guess I would ask the question, what's the most popular question you get from those schools who come over and they want to be like Moses? What's the number one question they ask you?
What's the number one question from schools or teachers that are starting up?
I would say funding. I would say, how do you build broad support from like the rest of the school? A lot of times it's like one teacher is really inspired to do it and then gets burned out because they just don't feel like their principal supports them, or that they don't have a team of teachers supporting them. So it's how to build support school-wide is a question that we get a lot. How to deal with ground squirrels is a question that we get a lot.
How do you deal with ground squirrels?
We trap them.
Trap them.
Yeah.
Because now you're getting my mind going to all kinds of critters. I mean, do you have any kids getting, did anybody get bitten by name your rodent?
No, nobody's ever gotten bit by, we get pecked by chickens, but
Moses,
it's kind of fun.
you've been doing this long enough that you have students now that have graduated from high school and even college. I wonder if you could share just a favorite story about a student that was impacted by this work.
Yeah, the vision early on was like, how do we create this feedback loop of like, not me going and doing this work, but like, how do we inspire and equip the community to do this work, and then like make a way for them to like come back and serve their community. And so for the first time in the history of our program, so we have a handful of students that were K-12 littles that came through schools with gardens, that came through Tucson High with gardens, that took the school garden class at U of A as a U of A student, and then through that went back and did internships in the elementary schools that they were little kids in. And now we have 2 people in our program that are employed with us that came through that. So now they're employed by the university and come back and serve the communities that they came from. And it's like that feedback loop is the dream. And
Yeah.
so,
What a win. Thanks, Danelle. That was a wonderful way to end this incredible experience in your school garden, Moses. And thank you again for your time. Danelle, if you have anything else, feel free to wrap it up.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. Just thanks so much to Moses Thompson here at Manzo Elementary in Tucson. I love this space. We love it when we can get teachers out here, and we love partnering with them for all the reasons you can imagine. So thanks, Moses.
bye everybody.
Thank you so much. And
Manny's
we'll have
clapping for everyone.
everything. Thank you, Manny, for being there. And we'll have all of this information on our website as soon as we can get it edited and uploaded. Thanks, Danelle. Thanks, Manny, and especially Moses. We thank you so much. Take
Yep,
care.
anytime.
Thanks.